Hello, everyone. My name's Joe Rohde. I probably get the prize for the greatest amount of imposter syndrome in the Explorers Club. You have people that have come from all walks of life to be here, but I started out as a theme park designer. So I believe this is the least likely origin story of a person who has now become a member of the Explorers Club. I am an artist. I started out as a theatrical set designer. I'm a painter. But what is the peculiar set of circumstances that led to my presence here in the Explorers Club? How did that come to be? I'm going to take some time to talk about that before I get around to my most salient point about the Explorers Club itself. First of all, how did I get here? My ancestors are Portuguese. They are from the Azores and from Madeira, and they ended up in Hawaii. So there must be some kind of genetic, not only did they leave mainland Portugal to come to islands in the middle of the Atlantic, they then left the islands in the middle of the Atlantic to go to a bunch of islands in the middle of the Pacific. Which meant I got to grow up in a place where a little kid of 6 could wander off into a jungle with very little fear of being eaten by any animal, because there's no animal bigger than your foot. So I spent a lot of my time wandering in the forest, catching bugs, catching lizards, catching frogs, bringing them home, looking at them, and when I wasn't doing that, I was left alone at the age of 6 in the vast municipal library while my mother took my brother to his very extended medical treatments. My mother had been an actress. My father was a cameraman on movies mainly, and that gave me visual access to a world of creativity and illusion, and all of that, of course, is very formative in the young life of anybody. So I kind of had the roots of natural history, the library, research, creativity, the genetics of creativity from my parents, some sense of exploration from my ancestry. I then took that and spent 40 years working for the Walt Disney Company as a theme park designer. Now, when people think of Disney, this is what they think of: the castles and the princesses and the talking flowers and all that stuff. I did almost none of this in the entirety of my career. My career was taken up with this kind of stuff. I ended up in a subcategory of design within the Disney Company that very much revolved around natural history, around cultural negotiation, around wildlife conservation advocacy, chiefly this park that you see back over there, Disney's Animal Kingdom. By the way, this big snowy mountain is also inside Disney's Animal Kingdom, working with indigenous people, negotiating content, very political content as you might manage, and the necessary expeditions involved with that. This is not what people expect of this Disney career, and it is through this odd channel that I ended up getting closer and closer and closer to the individuals who represent the Explorers Club. So I'm going to stay on this park thing for just a second longer. It's a theme park. It is a theme park, but it is a theme park about wildlife conservation. In order to build a theme park about wildlife conservation, you have to start a conservation organization. So I was instrumental in starting the Disney Conservation Fund, which has to date dispersed something on the order of $125 million worldwide to programs of a very, very, very obsessive focus on field application. So money does not go to administrative things. And then you have this other thing, this park. So it's a theme park, and we could think of this as a frivolous thing, but there is a thing about a theme park that if you're not involved with that business, it might not occur to you, which is a very, very high volume business. So this park, which presents people with the opportunity to go through a variety of simulacra of environments that do not just represent where animals live, but represent the interface of the relationships between people and those animals. Now, the Disney Company does not talk about how many people go through these parks, but I can tell you that anybody with a calculator could figure out that over the course of its 25-year lifetime, Disney's Animal Kingdom has exposed something between 150 million and 200 million people to the precepts of wildlife conservation, and in every case made direct advocacy charges to people to be involved and to take action. So remember, these are not research photographs from Africa. These are all photographs taken at a place that was deliberately designed, a place the size of Bruges. I also did another project that was a cultural project in Hawaii. Once again, if you look at it superficially, it looks like any resort you would ever see. It is, however, exceedingly and somewhat militantly focused on the idea that only indigenous Hawaiians have the right to define the visitor experience to Hawaii. So despite looking like a Trader Vic's, it was the first resort in the history of the Hawaiian Islands to have a Hawaiian language requirement, etc. So you can imagine that this kind of work put me in the hands of a different kind of people, and I actually became connected to the Explorers Club before I knew there was an Explorers Club, through the people that I was collaborating with in the process of getting these projects done. People like Jane Goodall, Alan Rabinovitz, Christina and Russ Mittermeier, Josh Gates, Nainoa Thompson. Some of you may know these people personally. And this all had an influence on my own personal expeditions. Largely, these were painterly expeditions into the Himalayas over many years. And over all of this time and all of this behavior as an artist, I slowly fell into the gravitation of people who were involved with the Explorers Club. I was invited in 2010 to become a member of the Explorers Club. And then after that, I was sort of recruited by Richard Weiss to become involved in one of the great pleasures of my life, which is the development and continued sort of involvement with the EC50 program, which I'm deeply charmed by. Now, I no longer work for the Disney company. I am now just a retired person who is a consultant. So I consult with Virgin Galactic. As those of you who were in Porto heard a little bit about that. I am consulting with Jane Goodall right now on a visitors center, a very strange experiential visitors center that we hope to get built in Arusha. And I've been working with other members of the club on kind of art-science fusion projects where we work together on a blend of art and science, mostly in the ends of wildlife conservation projects. This is only a little bit smaller than the actual painting we completed working with indigenous Inuit people in northern Baffin Island last summer. The actual painting is 2 meters tall and 10 meters long. This looks like it's a little bit bigger. And this was painted through a variety of communities to help them to do two things: to help them make visual to themselves their own ideas about their place in a world of nature, but also to create an atmosphere of collaboration between them and the scientists so that that could pursue. Now, all of this leads me to a conclusion. I have gone from one creative organization to another. The Explorers Club is a creative organization. Now, you shouldn't make an assertion without peer-reviewed literature to back it up. And this is the literature. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he just recently passed away, but he is the world's leading expert in creative systems. Nancy Andreasen, a preeminent American psychiatrist who studies the neurology of creativity. And they, of course, have created a great body of literature around what constitutes a creative organization. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about creativity as a sociological phenomenon, that while it does reside in individuals, it does not manifest itself until it falls inside of a system that is designed to allow creativity to manifest itself. And that requires a set of requirements. It requires a system of knowledge against which creative development can perform. A set of judges and appraisers who can look at the creative work, judge it, and then a set of people who can apply it so that it becomes something that happens. And there are places in the world where this happens occasionally. Renaissance Florence, the Mughal courts of Akbar in India in the 16th century, Paris in the 20s, Hollywood in the 20s and in the 70s, New York City, where the Explorers Club resides. Some of the properties that make a creative system creative, and people study this all the time, but one in particular that I think is intriguing, is that a creative system is defined by the things I said before: an understandable system, people who work to expand the system, judges who appraise the validity of the assumption, and people who take it and apply it. It also consists of very, very, very highly trained and very effective veterans who continue to refresh and challenge their own authority by the deliberate inclusion of young or novel participants with the right to challenge authority. That, to me, is the EC50, and that is a model of a creative organization. So once again, congratulations on a creative organization. Now, what do the experts say about the creative brain itself? I happen to speak from direct experience here because I was the subject of one of Nancy Andreasen's studies of high-performing creative people. And one of the things that she said, very important, is that there is no testable difference under lab conditions between the brain behavior of creative people, artists, writers, performers, and the brain behavior of scientists. But there is a categorical difference in brain behavior between that group as a master group and the baseline population. So clearly, art must be some kind of science. And therefore, the Explorers Club is, again, some kind of creative organization because it is both science and art. So when you look at these particular sort of personality profiles of creative people, you will find remarkable correlations to what you consider to be the properties of explorers. Curiosity. Leonardo da Vinci, who's like studying every possible aspect of the world to see what makes it work. A quotation from the famous Roy Chapman Andrews about creativity. Persistence. Both Van Gogh and Gauguin worked almost their entire lives as artists with no reward whatsoever for being an artist, but they still continued to execute that work. This is not unlike the decision somebody like Sammy Ramsey makes of, I'm going to study these ants, these bees, and you cannot stop me. I will do it. So once again, we know that there are explorers who express these values. We know these quotes, we know these people, we know these ideas about persistence. These are not unfamiliar to an explorer. The affinity for complexity. Anyone walking through Portugal, looking at the surfaces of all the buildings, imagining all the artists who contributed to the creation of these Baroque cathedrals and these tiled facades, knows the affinity for complexity. The desire to find it, the desire to express it, the desire to get into it, explore it, and to see it come to life. This, too, is a property of explorers. Progress is man's ability to complicate simplicity. So we know these things. Multiple examples that we've seen here about self-motivation. Emily Dickinson, famous American poet, wrote her entire body of work with no intention that anyone would ever see it. It was all published posthumously. That is entire self-motivation. That means that the reward that you seek for the work that you are doing is coming from you. It is coming from your ability to see the work, think about it, and judge that it is good. And again, we know that these other explorers have expressed this idea. Boundary breaking, Dadaism, a form of art that was designed to deny that art itself exists. I love this quote. People are going to tell you, oh, this is a bad idea, you really shouldn't do it, you should just go do it. Self-organizing, slightly different than self-modifying. That means you can't do something novel if you're using a system that already exists, because the system exists to do something that isn't novel. Therefore, if you expect to explore, if you expect to discover, you're also going to create a system, which we've seen again and again in the presentations here. Jackson Pollock's work, which is improvised on a canvas, is studied now as a form of fractal organization. So once again, the most effective way to do it is to do it. Get out and do it, and find the organization to do it. Passion and discipline. Martin Scorsese's work, which appears to be verite semina, is incredibly highly organized prior to the filmmaking. He's one of the most obsessive organizing guys in the film business. Courage. These are singers. Fear. Courage is the ability to manage fear. These are singers who, prior to going on stage, would lose their ability to speak, lose their ability to breathe, lose control of their bodily functions, pass out. And when your body passes out from fear, it does so to save you from cardiac arrest. There is no more fear than that. That's all the fear there is. Anyone who has experienced the depths of fear, this is kind of the range. And then you pass out from terror. So in order to become the famous performers that they are, and Adele is another, they have to develop a mechanism for controlling, suppressing, putting that fear aside so they can do the thing they can do, and not only do it, just get it done, but do it so well that they become famous for doing it. That is also a property of the Explorers Club, Ernest Shackleton's remarks. And of course, creative people are storytellers. Why not favela? Because here we are. So storytellers brings me to my final and most salient point, the ex and the plore. Explore. This is a Latin word that we get through the French. Explore means to go forth, that's the ex, and then to come back and say something about it, that's the plore. So the original explorer was basically a military scout, a guy who would go ahead of everybody into the forest and would yell back, hey, there's a river over here, it looks kind of shallow, we should all go this way. That's explore. But without the plore, there's nothing there. So we as explorers are two things, people who go forth, people who go out, and people who speak. Now, if the Explorers Club is a creative organization, it must have a creative product. What is the product of exploration? If it is a creative organization, what is its product? I submit to you that this is the product, the entirety of reality. The only world that exists is the world that we tell ourselves exists. And how do we know that such a world exists? Except by the people who explore that world to its furthest edges and come back and tell us. How did we find out that the Azores sat in the middle of the ocean except by people who went out into the middle of the ocean to find it? How do we know that the sky is not a dome pierced with holes suspended above us except by people who went into the sky to explore it? Everything we know about the world, everything we know about human culture, everything we know about the physical and mental limits of human experience, everything we know about being human. We know, we think we know, we believe, because it has been created for us as a vision by explorers. They are the people who create the world through their actions, through their explorations, through the revelations that they bring back, through the stories that they tell, through the way that they, through their words, through their images, through their science, through their action, build for us the world that we believe we inhabit. And that is the only world we have. That is the world. So explorers are basically the sculptors of reality. They are the people who make this place that we live in so that we know it is there. And under our feet, it changes every day, so we have a constant need for new explorers because the world keeps changing, keeps mutating, keeps adding to itself as time goes on. So the explorers of old, joined by the explorers of today, continue to define and redefine a world for us that we inhabit, so we know the world is there because of the work of these explorers. That is a creative organization. So if you are an explorer, when you leave this great convocation of explorers and go out back into the world, number one, remember the plore. Remember that you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to bring something back. You have to bring something back to the world because you are creative, because you are an artist, effectively. Because no matter what the work you do is, whether it is data, imagery, written context, or simply your presence and the acts you have been able to succeed in doing, you are building the common vision of the world that everyone lives in. And you also need to remember the X. So this is the other part. You must continue to explore. Now, I will bet you that most of the people sitting in these seats right now think, well, I do that right now. I go to the bottom of the ocean. I go into outer space. I go into the jungles. I examine these insects. I examine these animals. I do explore. I'm talking about something else. I am talking about breaking boundaries. I am talking about overcoming fear. And so, I urge you as explorers, when we leave this place, if you are a marine biologist, go seek out a ballerina and go to the desert. If you are an astronaut, sit down with a painter and go into the sea. If you are an archaeologist, go find a sculptor and work with them. Explore the outer boundaries of your own world, and you will find that your world expands. The meaning of your world, the scope of your world, and your capacity to explore will change because you have assaulted your own boundaries and gone forth with the X. So that's my real message. To continue to explore, and if we do this, then as Jacques Cousteau says, we all can be explorers because the world makes itself new every single day, and everything we think we know is worth looking at again. Thank you very much.